Since the beginning of civilization, humanity has been struggling to escape reality, to rise above the limits of our reality, to forget pain, and still the noise in our heads. We have long found many opportunities for escape throughout time and cultures. Escape through meditation, mysticism, music, art, and ritual. But throughout history, it seems that we have discovered a single, most unifying and culturally accepted form of escape: alcohol. It is celebrated at weddings and mourned at funerals. It incites creativity and it numbs pain. It fosters laughter and often destruction. It seems legal, glamorized, and massively consumed by everyday, normal people, and most can probably say they have rarely, if ever, considered the deeper spiritual consequences of alcohol. What if there isn't merely a physical or psychological price to drinking? What if there is an additional hidden cost in the medium of sustenance that is being paid each time alcohol enters the system? Today we are going to explore that question. We're going to explore the spiritual and energetic consequences of alcohol. What happens to our bodies, our minds, our souls, our energy fields, and our clarity when we consume alcohol. We'll consider archaic traditions, mystical teachings, contemporary science, philosophy, all with the intent of expanding your understanding of a larger reality and often hidden truth about alcohol. This isn't a lecture nor a shaming experience. This is a call to reflect, to understand, and maybe to excavate a piece of yourself that has remained buried under temporary escapes. The starting point of alcohol, Al-Kuhul. The story of alcohol is more than just a tale of fermentation and consumption. It is a story intertwined with humanity's desire to escape, to connect to the divine, or to undergo a form of transmutation. To understand alcohol fully, it is important to return to the beginning, not just the beginning of time, but the beginning of the term. The English term alcohol is rooted in the Arabic term al-kuhl. The Arabic term originally referred to a very fine black powder antimony sulfide used to darken the eyes in Middle Eastern cultures, known now as kohl, and still used today as a cosmetic. For ancient alchemists, however, what al-kuhl represented was much deeper and more metaphysical. It referred to an essence in extract, or what they referred to as the spirit of a material. Alchemy, the precursor to modern chemistry, was much more than a primitive form of chemistry. It was a spiritual science. Its goal was to understand the transformation of matter and spirit. In that sense, alcohol represented the essence or soul separated from the body, the volatile spirit left over after removing it from the material. This is probably why we still refer to distilled liquor as spirits today. A sacred gift and a dangerous tool. Alcohol use as a fermented beverage goes back thousands of years. Ancient civilizations such as the Sumerians, Egyptians, and Greeks embraced alcohol not just as liquid sustenance, but as a sacred offering to the gods. In ancient Mesopotamia, both wine and beer were ritually poured out in libation to the gods while beseeching them for favors. Egyptians associated wine with Osiris, the god of resurrection and fertility. Dionysus, the god of wine, ecstasy, and divine madness, held tremendous appeal for the Greeks. He was both worshipped and feared. The ancients did not treat alcoholic drinks with the casualness that we do today. They believed they were imbibing something sacred, something that could reveal but also destroy. To the sages and mystics of antiquity, alcohol had the ability to reveal the hidden self, to unveil emotion, and to bring light to the things we bury. But that illumination came at a price. The very drink that opened the gates to the vision also had the potential to eat away at the walls of reason. It was a double-edged sword. It was a door that was capable of inviting divinity or chaos. Distillation and alcohol in the Islamic world. When alcohol crossed into the Islamic world, a more defined role was applied to its function. Although alcohol consumption is, and always has been, prescribed in Islam, Muslim alchemists and scholars use the distillation process as a laboratory technique to study alcoholic spirits. The spiritual weight of purification and extraction was simply too significant to ignore. One of the most prominent characters in this transformation was the Persian polymath Jabir ibn Hayyan, or Geber in the West. He was one of the earliest writers to describe the process that would later produce alcohol in the recognizable form of ethanol, the extractable spirit of a thing. So over many centuries, alcohol changed from a sacred ceremonial drink to a scientifically distilled product of consumption. But in this passage, something was lost. What was once sacred or revered as a means to connect the world of being sacred has, for many, become the very instrumentality of disconnection from the spirit, from clarity, and from self. An invisible interaction with the human energy field. While most individuals consider alcohol in terms of its effects on the bodily system, relaxing muscles, lowering inhibitions, and hindering reflexes, perhaps the lesser-known impact has to do with interaction with the human energy system. Many spiritual traditions have been in agreement of a fundamental philosophical belief that humans are more than merely flesh and blood. In addition to the body, we are an energetic body, or subtle energy fields, referred to as auras, that vibrate beyond the constraints of the physical container. Our energy bodies receive and transmit frequencies, constantly interacting with the environment, other individuals, and cosmic consciousness. When alcohol enters the human body, it does not just alter neurotransmitters and liver enzymes, but will also disrupt the energetic field or aura and create fissures or tears. When the energetic field is broken, the person becomes energetically vulnerable, open. They can be influenced by negative external influences, influencers, thought forms, and potentially spiritual beings. Rudolph Steiner, 1861–1925, philosopher, scholar, mystic who founded anthroposophy, stated that alcohol weakens the connection between the human beings, human soul, and the spiritual world. The more intoxicated one becomes, the more parasitic energies that suck our weakened state tolerate our urge to continually weaken the connection. Chakras, imbalance, and separation from spirit. From the perspective of energy anatomy, alcohol has a polarizing effect on the chakra system, the body's spiritual energy centers. Alcohol overexcites the root chakra, which is linked to our earthly desires and survival. Simultaneously, alcohol dulls the crown chakra, which relates to higher consciousness and divine inspiration and purpose. Thus, it creates a precarious imbalance. The person becomes more rooted in any base desires, while also separated from spiritual guidance. It is not surprising then that many overindulging individuals report feeling emotionally drained, mentally foggy, spiritually numb. It's not just a hangover of the body, it's a hangover of the soul. The veil of illusion. Why are we attracted to alcohol? Alcohol has an irresistible appeal for humans. Across cultures, time, and social strata, we have imbibed alcohol in rituals, celebrated with it at milestones, and employed it as a facilitator for social engagement and escape. And yet, beneath this universal appeal is the question: why? Why are we attracted to something that, on some level, we know is harmful? What is the force that compels our emotional dependence on alcohol that remains unseen? The ultimate answer points to something much deeper than habit or addiction. It points us to a profound level of disconnection from our own nature. The human desire to escape. Humans have always had a desire to escape the limits of their existence, both psychologically and physiologically. Utilizing ritual, meditation, psychedelics, or even alcohol are all ways we try to escape our current experience. And so far, none of this collective behavior is accidental. We seek the means to escape from suffering or to find the opportunity for something greater than our typical consciousness. But alcohol represents a shortcut, a chemical key to another realm. Alcohol positions itself as a magical potion, a way to numb pain, elevate mood, or elevate confidence. All three of those everyday experiences certainly seem to be lessened for the time being. Stress disappears, insecurities dissolve, the world appears lighter. This is where the trap lies, and that state of always being altered state or drunk is not freedom at all. It is temporary, superficial, and deceptive. The illusion of confidence and connection. After a drink or two, I always feel more comfortable talking to people. How many times have we heard someone say that? For a shy person, it makes social interaction easier. For an anxious person, it gives a moment of peace. For a heartbroken person, it dulls the pain. The reality, however, is that this is all a fantasy created by chemicals in our body. Alcohol inebriates the brain, quiets the fear, and releases dopamine temporarily. But it takes away with one hand what it gives with the other. The confidence brought on by alcohol is unearned confidence. The courage given by alcohol is borrowed courage. The happiness created by alcohol is happiness during intoxication. When the buzz fades, we are left empty and without stronger, improved connections. More often than not, we are left more empty than we were before drinking. The worst part, we have the proclivity to repeat this course of action again and again, each time chasing the illusion, convinced it will be different. The more profound spiritual yearning underneath addiction. What we're really looking for is not intoxication. We're looking for connection. In Hermetic philosophy, there is an element called the unus mundus. This is the source of original unity, the place where life first emerged. This is the state of full harmony with the entire universe, where duality collapses and wholeness is attained. This concept can be found in all spiritual traditions. In Hinduism, it is called union with Brahman. In Buddhism, it is non-duality. In Christianity, it is communion with God. In Sufism, it is divine love intoxication. Instead of moving inward, society leads us to move outward in substances or experiences or consumption. Alcohol becomes a false door to the sacred. It comes close to the feeling of expansion, but leaves disconnection. It is a fake version of divine bliss, a fading imitation of what can only be realized through consciousness and spiritual awareness. Emotional dependency and psychological loops. On a psychological level, alcohol occupies a dangerous loop of emotional dependency. Most people don't drink for the taste. They drink because they are unhappy, anxious, lonely, or drowning in a problem they've yet to resolve. Alcohol becomes a sedative for stress, distraction from trauma, current replacement for an internal void. It has a similar effect to an air release valve, letting go of the pressure built up during living in modern times in a fast-paced, functionally challenged world. However, the reality is, it doesn't address the problem. It only delays it. Each time we use alcohol to think we are masking our emotions, we are only eliminating our opportunity to acknowledge and heal those emotions. We are stuck in a cycle. Pain arises. We escape through drinking. The cause of the pain does not go away, it just comes back. Pain arises. Cycle repeats. A service to a series of temporary highs and a later life emptiness. The wisdom of the ancients, finding inner fulfillment instead of outer stimulation. Many of the ancient sages had a deep understanding of this and didn't view alcohol as just a physical substance, but as a spiritual test and force that can trick or destroy. Plato gave an account of the life of the soul and the way to live towards enlightenment in the Republic. He indicated that the soul's journey was an ascent away from illusion and towards truth. The illusion of bodily response will reverse this journey and pull the soul back into the cave of shadows and away from light. Likewise, Lao Tzu identified that peace comes when we align ourselves with the Tao. This is not to be confused with brute force, excess, or imitation. In the Bhagavad Gita, sattva is quality of harmony, clarity, and purity. Alcohol promotes rajas, restlessness, and tamas, ignorance, both of which distort perception and impede spiritual maturation. These teachings demonstrate a consistent, essential truth. Freedom is not acquired through indulgence. It is achieved through alignment. Alcohol as an alternate for inner work. Modern psychology is now realizing the depth of these ancient views. It is no longer necessary to gradually learn that people don't numb themselves with substances because they enjoy suffering. They do so while trying to cope. Alcohol becomes a substitution for shadow work, a disguise for deeper wounds, and a liberator for the discomfort of self-awareness. So the real question is not will you or won't you? The real question is, what inside of you is looking for an escape? And more importantly, what would happen if, instead of running, you moved towards it? Authentic peace, authentic liberation. Genuine freedom, true and lasting freedom, is not found within a bottle. Freedom dwells within, waiting for us to reconnect with the self, to identify who we are without artificial enhancement. It begins the moment we stop expecting alcohol to bring a feeling of wholeness back in us, and instead begin to remember true wholeness is our natural state. Peace, joy, and connection are not things purchased or borrowed. They are waiting to be uncovered. Our path is one of not escape but return. To the center, the soul, the truth. Spiritual perspectives and warnings. Throughout history, across continents and cultures, sages, prophets, and mystics have provided intriguing insights into alcohol's impact. They are not approaching us a framework of morality judgments, but rather because of a sincere understanding, compassion, and desire to preserve our continuing relationship with the divine. These spiritual voices help us understand precisely why intoxicants are so dangerous on a spiritual level, as well as the nature of our losses after we consume them. What follows is a patchwork of teachings from various traditions, each presenting the same thread, that alcohol misuse becomes a veil that inhibits the soul. Yogic and Vedic traditions. Suppressing the sattva, amplifying the tamas. In Vedic philosophy, we discover the concept of guna, which is an important way to understand the three essential qualities of all matter and consciousness. Sattva, purity, clarity and harmony, passion activities and restlessness. Tamas, inertia, darkness and ignorance. According to the Bhagavad Gita, spiritual growth and improvement can only come from a mind that is predominated by sattva, one which contains serenity and clarity. Alcohol specifically interrupts these qualities. Alcohol increases raga by enhancing anxiety, emotional instability, and impulsiveness, and alcohol increases tamas by deadening the senses and pulling consciousness. The yogic path revolves around the development of inner silence, clarity of thought, and interaction with the divine God, utilizing meditation, breathing, and letting go of attachment as methods to achieve these ends. Alcohol intrinsically pulls the practitioner away from aim. According to Patanjali in the Yoga Sutra, clarity of consciousness and a healthy, conscious body are essential for moving into loftier states of consciousness. Alcohol obscures both clarity and consciousness and is one clear and present obstacle for the path of the spiritualist. Buddhist views intoxication as an obstacle on the way to enlightenment. The path to enlightenment in Buddhism depends on having a fully present and aware, attentive mind. The Buddhist Noble Eightfold Path language of steps toward liberation includes as a specific instruction under right action: abandon intoxicating substances that hinder the mind. The Buddha espoused that anything that weakens mindfulness and inner clarity interferes with the way to nirvana, the final understanding of truth and the release from suffering. Alcohol as a substance clouds concentration, self-reflection, and ethical behavior. Three key components of Buddhistic practice. The cessation of consuming alcohol is not outside the purview in many Buddhist groups, but falls under the sila, your ethical conduct. Not because substances are bad, but because they cloud spiritual intelligence. When the mind is free and clear, we perceive accurately. When the mind is contaminated by intoxication, we see everything as illusory, as Maya delusion and self-deception. Alchemy, the symbol of transformation. In the tradition of Hermeticism and in medieval alchemy, alcohol was understood to be a dual symbolism substance. As a duality, it not only represented the capacity to extract essence, purify and transform, it also represented divestiture. Alcohol was understood to extract the volatile spirit from the material, signaling freedom of the soul from the prisoner of flesh. The same symbolism, however, also informed warnings of improper use. The improper or careless use of alcohol could serve in degrading the subtle energy body or the light body, and in doing so, weaken the practitioner's capacity to align with the divine order of the cosmos. Massively ignorant misuse of alcohol was understood to be a form of spiritual devolution. Instead of ascending to illumination, a practitioner risked descending into the density of the material, becoming imprisoned in illusion, entangled in base desires. In this construct, alcohol is not bad. It is just extremely dangerous without wisdom, reverence, and purpose. Sufi teachings, divine love, wine versus literal wine. The Sufi tradition is the most famous for its ecstatic spirituality and mystical poetry that evokes drink. Great Persian poet and mystic, Rumi, often referred to the wine of divine love, which Rumi described as a spiritual intoxication, and that made the heart joyous and already connected to God. But make note, it needs to be stated that Rumi was referring metaphorically to alcohol. Rumi also wrote that real wine, drunk in ignorance, gazes the seeker from the path. Wine may resemble divine drinking. However, drinking literal wine threatens to leave the soul more disconnected and confused. True intoxication, for the Sufi, came not from earthly wine but from zikr, the remembrance of God. To the Sufis, wine is sacred only when it is a reference to divinity presence, whereas the actual wine referenced here is specters and shadow, comprising the detached experience of union. Christianity, wine, communion, and the dangers of excess. In Christianity, wine is assigned a unique and simultaneously contradictory set of ethical implications. As mentioned above, wine is at the center of the Eucharist. In the Eucharist, the wine, in representing the blood of Jesus Christ, is part of a new covenant that is not exclusively with humanity. Also, Christ's blood subsumes the sacred Hystos, united as one flesh and blood archetype with ancient humanity. The Eucharist is therefore sacred, symbolic, and essential in Christian rituals and remembering a union with God. Yet in many passages throughout the New Testament, there are clear warnings against overindulgence of wine. St. Paul, in his letters, encourages believers to be sober-minded. He associates drunkenness with moral failure, spiritual weakness, and distance away from God. St. Augustine, certainly one of the greatest theologians of Christianity, described drunkenness as a kind of self-destruction, a denial of grace. He wrote extensively on how alcohol saturates all inner light, pulling the soul from prayer, contemplation, and communion with God. The lesson is clear: sacral moderation, dangerous excess. Shamanic traditions, alcohol and the light body. In shamanic traditions, the energetic body, sometimes referred to as the light body or spirit body, is vital to maintaining harmony between the physical, emotional, and spiritual realms. Many shamans believe that alcohol weakens the light body, rendering individuals vulnerable to parasitic beings, spiritual attack, and illness, not only in their body, but also in their psyches. Although plant medicines are typically used purposely and ritually in shamanism, alcohol is handled differently. Alcohol is often banned or strictly limited in ceremonial practices. Some shamans have claimed alcohol attracts lower vibrational life forms, aspects of spirit that feed off of the chaos, pain, and vulnerability that intoxication promotes. These beings are sometimes referred to as hungry ghosts, as these spirit attachments form through human addiction. The axis mundi, our cosmic connection. All these mystic experiences speak to one fundamental truth. Alcohol interferes with our axis mundi, the guiding structure that gives access to the divine order of things, the earth and the sky. When in good completion, we have access to the intuition, spiritual direction, emotional equilibrium, creative propulsion. When interrupted through intoxication, trauma, or energetic disturbance, we become ungrounded, frenzied, and unguarded. We may still be functional, but seemingly not centered. We may still be alive, but seemingly not spiritually awakened. Ritual versus recklessness. Let us note that not all spiritual traditions condemn alcohol. Rarely in ritualistic and sacred contexts, alcohol has been used to conduct altered states of consciousness. Pure intentions, spiritual intention, energetic protection, cultural framework. The line between ecstasy and debauchery is slender. Without awareness, clarity, and duty, what starts as a sacred act can quickly lead to spiritual degeneration. Socrates and the imperative of self-mastery. Let us return to the teachings of Socrates, who taught that self-mastery is the beginning of all virtues. For Socrates, the good life was not rooted in external distraction, but in inner discipline. He reasoned that those people who lack control over their impulses are also not free. They are slaves to their appetites. When we give up our power to alcohol and other substances, we don't gain anything, we lose our freedom. These ancient lessons don't put us down, they push us. They ask the question, does your experience of alcohol lift you up or bring you down? Does it connect you to the divine, or does it simply provide a diversion from forfeit? You won't find these answers in books or theories. The answers exist in how you feel when the drinking ends. A new way of seeing. Freedom from the cycle. We have traveled through the beginnings of alcohol, its subtle but deep impact on our energy field, the psychological illusion it builds, and the endless warnings from ancient spiritual traditions. Now we arrive at the most important question. How do we break free? How do we break free of not just the substance, but all the emotional, mental, and spiritual layers of dependence we have built around the substance? The answer is not in fear or shame, it is in awakening. Real lasting transformation starts with awareness. The awakening spark, from reaction to realization. Every transformation begins with a moment of clarity. When you move from behaving out of unconscious habitual behavior to conscious reflection. That spark can come after waking up from a drinking night, feeling like you were disconnected. It can come after a point of realization that peace isn't found at the bottom of a glass. Or it could come right now, recognizing the disconnection from who you are to who you could be. This awakening is not a negative experience. It is a gift. It is a point of access into deeper truth. You are not broken, you are simply out of alignment, and you can come back. Spiritual practices that heal and restore. There are powerful and time-tested practices that support reconnection to our essence and reconstruction of the parts of our being dulled by alcohol. Meditation supports inner stillness, supports emotional regulation, supports returning to the present moment, the only time where healing begins. Conscious breathwork. Breathwork is an opportunity to repattern the nervous system, facilitate body detoxification, and enrich the brain and spirit in oxygen. Yoga helps reestablish balance in the energy centers, chakras, deepen body awareness, and renew our relationship to the sacredness of embodiment. Prayer and/or devotion invites divine support, reminds us we are not alone on this journey, reminds us there is grace always waiting for us. Reiki and energy healing helps repair tears in the aura, release blockages, and restore positive vibration. Journaling and shadow work explores emotional burials, guilt, fear, shame, grief, and moves us towards integration. These practices and tools do more than support the cessation of alcohol, they support our remembering. Nature, Earth's original detox. We've become so overstimulated in today's world that we've lost touch with nature, the original force that sustains our very lives. Because alcohol dulls our sensitivity to the natural world, we forget the rhythm of life, the wind rolling through the trees, the wisdom of still water, the silence of a star-filled night. Being in nature doesn't just heal us, it restores us. Walk barefoot in the forest, sit next to a flowing stream, watch the sun rise in silence. These simple activities create new neural pathways in our nervous system, cleanse our energy field, and gently wake our spirit. The power of gratitude and intention. Many times the problem we're dealing with when it comes to addiction is that it is less of a craving and more of a spiritual emptiness. Alcohol fills the silence. It gives us temporary relief from the discomfort of not feeling enough. However, when we integrate gratitude and intention, everything changes. Start small. Be thankful for the breath in your lungs, the heart that is still beating, the moment you are in now. Gratitude is not a cliché. It's a frequency, and with allowing ourselves to be in gratitude, our vibration shifts. We start to see beauty where there was boredom, abundance where there was lack. The hidden medicine. You don't have to do it alone. One of the reasons we have an increasing alcohol problem is that we no longer have real connection. However, healing happens in community. Find or create a community, meditation and mindfulness groups, spiritual communities. Conscious friends who see you, nurture you, and hold you accountable. Allow yourself to be seen without shame. Let others witness your transformation. Isolation fuels addiction. Community fuels awakening. The importance of forgiveness, especially for yourself. For many people, the hardest part of this journey is not letting go of alcohol. It's forgiving yourself for prior mistakes. Maybe you said things you wish you hadn't. Maybe you hurt people you cared about. Maybe you lost love, opportunity, and even you. But here is the good news. You are not limited by your past. Your mistakes do not cancel your worth. Remember that Rumi said, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." Guilt keeps us stuck, forgiveness sets us free. Let your past be your teacher, not your jailer. The tree that blooms again. When you break away from the pattern of alcohol, you are not simply not consuming it. You are rebirthing. The image to visualize is your soul as a tree covered in snow, bare, cold, and seemingly lifeless. In time, with intention and love, that very tree will sprout new life. That tree will bloom, it will provide shade, it will bear fruit. In the same way, your spirit will flourish when you engage with the path of consciousness versus consumption. This is not the end of your story. This is the beginning of a return home. You are the master of your consciousness. You are not powerless. You are not a prisoner to your habits, cravings, or culture. You are not designed to live life, dumbed out, disconnected, and dull. You are the master of your consciousness. You are meant to walk in clarity, in truth, in light. So the question is not, can I live without alcohol? The real question is, what will I discover when I no longer need it? Who will I become when I reclaim my wholeness? What joy, what peace, what brilliance lies beneath, only waiting to rise again? The job's yours. You were never meant to look for peace. You were meant to possess it. You were never meant to take joy from others. You were meant to give them joy. And the divine has never been on the outside of you, only on the inside. Lose that delusion, claim that power, and be that true intoxication where you are an awakened, luminous, life-filled, and truly divinely whole soul. Thank you for being on this journey. And take that first step if you are ready, not out of fear, but love, for you, for your future, and for that sacredly magnificent light that you truly are.